Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan and welcome to the latest edition of the RCB Radio Sports Show, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. And sometimes we look at other dare I say, Irish sort of sports, world, global sort of sports, and no better sport, obviously, than the wrestling industry, a global sort of phenomenon all across the States and all across the globe. And we're delighted this evening to be joined by one of the pioneers of women's wrestling, the one and only Velvet Sky. She's been an active wrestler since the early days of 2003 up until 2016, then making a short return to Ring of Honor before making the transition now in NWA to color commentator. And Velvet, as a person that I've seen a good lot of your career during your time in TNA, which was widely broadcast throughout Ireland, what's that been like, making the transition in terms of being a wrestler to a commentator? Was it harder than what you think, or has it been come to your expectations so far?
I have to say it's been a pretty smooth transition, honestly. I don't have to take bumps, first of all, in what I do now. But when I first got the phone call last year, almost a year ago, I was asked by Billy Corgan if I wanted to come and try out the role of commentating for NWA. And I was excited that he, had faith in me or chose me for this role, because I had worked with Billy recently during my last run in TNA. And that's kind of how the two of us met. And we kind of worked on some character stuff for me in TNA. So when I got the call, I was super stoked and excited, but at the same time, I was like, man, this is something in the industry that I've never done before. I'm not versed in commentating. You could sit and watch commentators like the greats, from the past, but it's kind of like you kind of learn as you go, which is what I've been doing. And I feel like I've come a long way already. I still have a long way to go, and I still have so much more to learn. But I have to say, sitting next to Tim Storm and Joe Galley on commentary, they really, really have taken me under their wing and kind of showed me the ropes, if you will, of, the commentating part of our industry. And they have been just excellent mentors to me. And I just appreciate being able to sit alongside of the both of them. But it's a learning process, like I said, because I've only ever wrestled. But I like to kind of dip my toes in all the waters of the industry and kind of get versed in even more roles than just wrestler commentator. But so far, it's been great. I love my role in the NWA. I love the people that I sit next to. I love the locker room is great. The production, the crew, it's just a breath of fresh air to still be involved in professional wrestling and work somewhere so professional like the NWA. I love it there.
And Velvet, in terms of commentating, do you find a difference between commentating in terms of men's matches or women's matches, or is it sometimes more, do you find it more easier to commentate on a men's match rather than a women's match?
For me, it's really, there's no difference. There's no easier or harder or more fun or less fun. It's just, whoever's in the ring, we do our best to highlight them and kind of tell a story. And every so often when I have to sit next to Austin Idol and listen to his mouth, blah, 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 I got to put him in his place. Because sometimes he likes to go off track a little bit, and then I get off track, and the two of us are off track. And then poor Joe has to kind of bring us both back. And I'm just like, Austin, shut up. I'm just kidding. I love him. I love everybody there. But no, there really is no difference with women's and men's matches calling both of them. It's fun either way to me, really.
And as someone has been a pioneer of women's wrestling, how do you find the current state of wrestling and women's wrestling in NWA? Is it continuously growing all the time? Do you feel that you are on par with what else is out there in terms of all elite wrestling, in terms of any other women's locker room or dressing room? Do you feel that NWA has the potential to really grow and expand its domain in terms of women's wrestling and get back to where you are at the height of the knockouts back in TNA?
I mean, I absolutely believe that, the NWA, like, we're just getting started. It's been around forever. And then, Billy Corgan 4 years ago, maybe, revived it. And we are really just getting started. Everything you're seeing, I mean, it's so exciting. There's so many exciting things to come in the NWA. There's so many cool changes. As far as the women in the NWA go, I'm so stoked for them because we like to refer to the NWA as the land of opportunities. They're constantly bringing in new girls just to showcase their talents, kind of take a look at them and see what they're made of and what they can do in the ring. So they're constantly giving not only the guys, because they bring new faces in all the time in the men's division, but is in the women's division as well. So there's always new faces and familiar faces as far as the women go, that you will see in the ring. And like I said, it's growing, it's expanding, and we're just going to continue to level up. And I do honestly, and I'm not just saying this because I'm an employee there, but being there and just seeing the mind of Billy Corgan and what he has in store for everybody coming up, I honestly believe, yes, that the NWA is really the next biggest thing as far as pro wrestling goes. And I'm so excited to be a part of this ride, to be honest.
And Velvet, do you feel it's a natural transition from you, from moving from in the ring maybe to commentating role? Who knows, maybe a future probably GM sort of a role. Are there sort of areas in terms of storytelling, in terms of mic skills, in terms of performance art, theatre? Is that something that really sort of appeals to you in terms of, dare I say, the whole dialogue that goes with professional wrestling these days, the whole sort of the storyboard, basically?
You're asking me if I would be interested in other roles in wrestling?
Yeah, like a GM sort of a role or something like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Like I said, I love the wrestling industry. I love it so much. And even though, I mean, I started I think I started training in late 2001, and I did retire in 2016 from in-ring competition. But when I retired from in-ring competition in 2016, I made it clear that I'm only retiring from being an active wrestler, that I didn't want to, and I wasn't going to, or nor do I have plans to walk away from this industry as a whole anytime soon. I absolutely love this business. I've sacrificed pretty much my entire youth. I should say my entire youth. I should say maybe my late teens, early 20s. Like, so many sacrifices were made to make this my career and to get longevity out of it. Whether that was in the ring, commentating what I'm doing now, being a GM, like you said, there's definitely potential and room for that. I would at some point, I wouldn't mind, obviously my mainstay right now, my main focus in the NWA is to provide commentary alongside Joe and Tim. But I wouldn't mind being involved somewhere down the line, maybe in the NWA, in a storyline or two, whether I'm a GM or whether I'm involved in, a non-wrestling feud with, whoever, they would put me in there with. But I would definitely, I'm open to all aspects of this business, no matter what it is. But right now, my main sole focus is to continue to provide commentary and to just continue to learn and grow from it. Because like I said, I've learned a lot in just under a year. I feel like I've come into my own, especially as of recently. The feedback from Billy has been great. He's very happy with my performance there as well. And that means the most because he's the boss and we want to keep the boss happy. But I still, again, like I said, I still have so much to learn as far as commentary goes. So that's my main concern, but I would definitely be open to another role in the NWA. Like you said, general manager, referee, like guest referee rather, something in a storyline, because I love this business so much. So I would definitely be open to something too.
And it certainly comes across that way, Velvet. And Velvet, was that a difficult decision for you back in 2016? And was the body telling you that it was time to go, in terms of were the injuries beginning to mount up? Was concussions a concern for you? Did you feel maybe that, was it hard at that stage? I know it's always hard sometimes to say, maybe the timing is never a good time, but did you feel yourself that that you were happy to, I know no one's never happy to be retired, but did you feel at that stage that, yeah, I can go out with my head held high, you know, in terms of what I wanted to accomplish?
So when I walked away in 2016, it was on my own terms. I was not injured. I've thankfully never suffered a concussion in all of my years in wrestling, thank God. But the reason I decided to call it quits was first and foremost, and let me preface this by saying I love TNA Impact Wrestling. That's always going to be, you know, my home no matter what. They are the company that gave me my big break, gave me a chance, put their faith in me to be a part of the Knockouts division and Knockouts champion. So I have nothing bad to say about them. But at the time in 2016, I was not happy there anymore, as were not a lot of the guys and girls that were there. It was under different management. A lot had changed management wise, and not for the better. No one was really happy during that time in TNA. And for me in particular, I hadn't been happy there for quite some time. And it was a management thing. I just, you know, no one really saw eye to eye with management at that point. And we didn't like the direction they were bringing the company in. So right around the time I had my last match in 2016, my contract was coming up for renewal anyways, was coming to an end. And I thanked them and I said, guys, like, I don't want to resign. I kind of just want to, finish out my contract here. And, I thanked them for everything, the opportunities, the faith they had in me. But I walked away on my own terms because, again, I wasn't having fun there anymore. And I did feel, even though my body felt great, I did feel like I was on the road so much, like almost 10 years straight with them. I just felt that, like, mentally and physically, I just needed a breather from being on the road, from wrestling, from bumping, from just go. My lifestyle, ever since I got into wrestling, but more specifically TNA, has always been go on a plane, in a rental car, in a hotel, on a bus, just on the road. And I loved it. I'm not complaining, but I needed a break and I wasn't happy. So they agreed, that we could part ways. It was nice civil parting. And then I used the time when I walked away to take online classes for college, because when I first got into wrestling, I was in college a year and a half before I got into wrestling. And I knew, I was like, okay, if I'm going to try to make it as a wrestler, I'm young. I was 19, 20 years old. I said, now's the time to go after my dream as a wrestler, because you could always come back to college. You can go back to college when you're 50, 60 years old, but you can't start a wrestling career when you're 50 and 60. So I left college to pursue a wrestling career. And God, that was probably 2000, 2001. Yep. And when I walked away from TNA in 2016, I used that opportunity now, because I was home more, I took online classes and I, went back to college, got my degree, just to have, having that piece of paper in your back pocket. It's never, it's a good thing. A lot of people in wrestling, they just, I feel like they just wrestle so they can't wrestle anymore. And they don't really have a backup plan. Like, what do you do after wrestling? What do you do when you can't bump anymore, when you can't travel anymore? And for me, it was important to have that education as something to fall back on. And I'm not applying it right now because I'm still heavily involved in the wrestling industry, but it's always good to have that degree just to fall back on, just in case, the worst case scenario. So when I went back to school and I got my degree, and I was away from wrestling for a little while, just to kind of, like I said, breather, mental, physical break, got my degree. And then a couple of years went by and I was like, man, I really miss being, out there meeting the fans and doing signings and working for a company. So I'm meeting the fans to this day is still my favorite part of what I do as a retired wrestler, as a commentator now in the NWA. It's the fans. When I walked away, in 2016, the fans is what I was going to miss the most, because the fans, even to this day, have my back and are so loyal, and I'm so grateful and appreciative to all of them. So it was a hard decision to walk away, but at the same time, I was listening to my body and my brain saying, Velvet, go take a break, go get your degree, go take a breather, go spend time with your family, because I missed a lot of holidays and birthdays and get-togethers. So I did that. And I stayed in the public eye, though, despite being retired in the ring. I still did autograph signings. I still did, meet and greets and conventions and stuff like that, but just not a lot, because I still needed to just step back and just, I'm home now. I can enjoy my life home. I can enjoy my animals. I can enjoy my family and my friends. But at this point, I'm like, all right, where are we going? When are we going? When am I meeting the fans next? I'm so excited to still be able to do meet and greets and conventions, and to be able to go out and meet the fans as a whole. I just feel like I'm very blessed, and I've been very blessed in my career in this industry. This industry has been very good to me.
And Velvet, particular of interest of note to me was obviously your time TNA. There was a name change, and you got the name Velvet Sky. In terms of research, in terms of trying to look up how that sort of came about today, obviously you know that sort of story very well. You might enlighten our audience in terms of how you became known as Velvet Sky. How was there a meeting of brains, a meeting of minds in terms of that sort of famous name change, or how did it come, or is there a funny story behind it?
There really is no story other than, when I was on the independent scene, I wrestled as Talia Madison. That was my wrestling name way before Velvet Sky. So I just remember when I first debuted on TNA, this was before, before I even had a contract. So it was before the name change. It was before I signed a contract. I debuted on TNA television as Talia Madison, and it said my name, Talia Madison, on the screen. Mike Tenay and Don West announced me as Talia Madison. But because I just don't think that they were sure yet what they wanted to name all of the new knockouts. Because if you remember, the knockouts division was born in 2007. So prior to that, there was no women's division. So now you have all these girls, like, I don't even remember how many came in at once, maybe 10. Now you have all these girls that you have to management has to think of names for each one of these girls, these new women. So we all kind of debuted using our independent name. And then I remember I signed my contracts, and I was at the airport on my way to I think it was my first set of TNA television tapings. And Angelina Love had already been there. She was there a day prior or something like that. She was there before I got there. So she called me, I'll never forget this day, as I was going through airport security. And she's like, you're never going to believe this. They just told me what our names are going to be. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I didn't think they were going to be changing the names or whatever, but okay, no problem. I'm like, what is it? She's like, are you sitting down? And I'm like, oh, Jesus. I'm like, what is it? She's like, they're calling you Velvet Sky. Now, at first, it took me a long time to get used to that name. I mean, I did one of these. She says it to me, and I went.
I imagine.
They're calling, I'm sorry, what? Because it was just such I just didn't know what to think of it. I'm like, what kind of a name is Velvet Sky? What is that? And then she told me her name, and I'm like, okay, well, your name's cute at least. But I'm like, man, I just could not get on board with the Velvet Sky name at first, because it was just so out of left field from Talia Madison,
Yeah.
So it did. And I told Vince Russo this, because I believe he's the one that came up with the name. And I did tell him to this day, I'm like, look, it took me a while to get used to that name. But the more, I went on with the name, and every year that passed, it kind of grew on me. And I'm like, you know what? I like my name because it's different. It's unique. It's, it's memorable. There's really not a name out there like that. It's not plain, and it did grow on me. And to this day now, I love it now. But at first it was a huge shocker, because again, I didn't know that they had planned on changing my name because I debuted as Talia. And then I guess when you sign the contract, you know, they own the likes to your name and your appearances and all that stuff. So that's when they decided to change my name. But the funny thing is, it was so out of left field from Talia Madison to Velvet Sky. I feel like a lot of the other girls, their chosen names by management it was kind of close to what their independent names were.
Okay.
So I remember like Roxy Laveau on the independent scene, she was Nikki Rox. So you got Rox and Roxy. And then, God, what was it? It was Ashley Lane, I think it was Madison Rain. I don't remember. There were, I don't remember a lot of the girls' indie names. I'm trying to remember, but a lot of them were similar. Like the contractual names were similar to like what they were on the independent scene. And then I'm like, oh, great. You know, nope, it's Velvet Sky. It's Velvet Sky. I was like, oh, Jesus, God Almighty. Okay, let's do this. But, you know, it's grown on me to this day.
And Velvet, in terms of playing sort of characters, you obviously in your time in TNA, you started off as probably that seductive sort of temptress in terms of with a sort of, dare I say, a sort of a poison attitude, but quickly developed into sort of a baby face sort of character as well. And you sort of like those portrayals, maybe jumping from heel to face, and do you feel maybe some of the best storylines are the storylines where you could portray that sort of heel side of your character? Was that the most sort of fun part to play that sort of nasty sort of streak?
Yeah, I did. I always liked playing the heel role. The bad girl role is always fun. And to me, it was fun because I'm the total opposite in real life of what you saw during the Velvet Sky, Beautiful People heel days. So to be able to kind of step out of my comfort zone and because on the independent scene for a while, I was babyface. And then when I joined forces with April Hunter and we were Team TNA, we were heels, which was fun. So that was kind of my first taste of being a heel in wrestling, was when I was in a tag team with her way before TNA. But when I got to play the bad girl heel role in the Beautiful People with Angelina Love, it was so much fun. It really was. We were so ridiculous, and the things we would say and our antics, and then our backstage vignettes, so much fun. However, I will say, when I was during my singles run as a singles wrestler, they did turn me babyface. And I have to say, I really enjoyed playing the babyface role as well, because, you know, the crowd, I love the crowd, the support of the fans in the crowds. They were there for me no matter what. They were there to boo me as a heel, and they were even louder to cheer me as a babyface. And I feed, just like a lot of wrestlers do, we feed off the energy of the crowd. It just kind of helps us as performers kind of get into character more, you know, when you have the crowd reactions like I did and like the Beautiful People did. So babyface Velvet Sky was a lot of fun. It was different from heel Velvet Sky, obviously. But again, I always fed off the energy and the responses and the cheers from the crowd. And it was awesome to go out there as a babyface and actually engage in the crowd and acknowledge them, happy, smile, cheery. Whereas before, as a heel, it would be like, man, nah, screw you. So both, I enjoyed playing both kind of equally. But I will say it was more fun to play the bad girl role.
And I suppose Velvet, just a quick thing in terms of, you mentioned the knockout division, and when it started off, it was a new face of Impact Wrestling, and you sort of set a different sort of role in terms of women's wrestling. It was all in-ring action combat. Dare I say, back in the early 2000s in the WWE, women's wrestling had featured sort of bras and panties matches, wrestling in mud, batting on a stick sort of matches. From the right beginning, it was in TNA. It was all sort of in-ring sort of action, in-ring tussle. There was never an element of a striptease or a bra and panties or a lingerie shoes or any sort of scenes like that in terms of knockout women. And did you get reassurances when you signed on for Knockouts and TNA Impact Wrestling that there would be no sort of terms like that resemble that time in WWE?
No, we never got any, excuse me, word that we weren't going to have those type of matches. But I just feel like, we were on Spike TV. We were starting this Knockouts division, this women's division in TNA, first time ever as a whole, with these group of girls that we all kind of came up with each other on the independent scene, which was really cool. So when I first got there, I mean, I knew all the Knockouts. We knew each other from busting our butts on the independent scene for so long. So we kind of knew, it was just kind of known, like an unspoken, like, okay, we have a lot to prove here. We are starting this division. We are all carrying this division on our shoulders. Each girl had their own individual role. They had their own look, their own character, like everything. Every knockout was different. You know what I mean? Like there was someone for everyone. There weren't just cookie cutter, blonde hair, big boobs, even though I'm not hating on them. I like blonde hair, big boob girls. I don't mind them. But my point is, everybody had their own unique look, character, moveset, personality when it came to the Knockouts division. And that's what made us so unique. Couple that with, yes, we were very hard hitting. We did put on legitimate hard hitting wrestling matches because it was what was expected of us, especially during that time when, WWE was going the opposite route. And Gail Kim being like the pioneer of the Knockouts division, she had been pushing for a Knockouts division for quite some time because she wanted to wrestle. So, just kind of following Gail's mentality of, guys, we're going to make this the best women's division in wrestling today. We're going to have legitimate matches. We're not going to go out there and just fluff it up. And a lot of people will say, well, Velvet, that's not true because you and Angelina were like fluffing it up with you guys, your entrance and your sexy look and your gear. But that's just a character. They're just characters that we were playing. Like I said, everybody had their own individual, unique character, look, personality that they brought to the table in the Knockouts division. And during that time, it just so happened Angelina and Love and I, we were like the bad girls, like the mean girls, like that you look, but you can't touch, like that was our personality and our draw and our appeal to the crowds. And that's just what we brought to the table. But when we got in the ring, like we had hard hitting matches, no matter who they were with. So I have to say, like, it was refreshing to kind of go in the opposite direction of what WWE was doing with the girls at that time. Although I'm going to be honest, I don't have a problem with those type of matches, the mud wrestling and the bra and panties. I don't have a problem with that because when I was kind of, before I got into wrestling, the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression era of wrestling, of WWF was very popular. Yep. And that's what hooked me as a fan before I was even a wrestler. And back then there really was, I should say, Attitude Era. There really was there were no, consistent like women's matches. It was like a match here and there, but it was mostly, if you remember, like TNA, bra and panties matches, and then there'd be the Jello match and there'd be the mud match. And to me, that looks fun. I'm just like, that just looks fun. And that's kind of what I saw. I was used to watching when I was a fan, watching WWF. But when I got into wrestling, when I first got into wrestling, I'm like, all right, like I kind of want to just try to be taken serious as a wrestler and kind of earn the respect as my peers. So I just went out there, whether it was indie matches or TNA matches, and gave it my all and tried my best every single time I stepped foot in that ring. But we did have a mud wrestling match, if you remember correctly, in TNA. It was me versus Lacey Von Erich with Madison Rayne as a special guest ref. That was so much fun. To me, like, it was a nice change from being in the ring. It was something different. It was something new. It was so much fun just slipping and sliding in that mud. So to answer your original question, yes, it was expected of the Knockouts when we first came together to be the hard-hitting alternate to WWE women's wrestling and what their women, or what they were having their women do at the time. And I feel like the Knockouts, we went above and beyond and delivered well, exceeded what was expected of us, which is why the Knockouts division during its time was probably the most talked about women's roster. You know, we were on fire. And I mean, we definitely set the bar high for women's wrestling during that time, for sure.
And Velvet, I know I'm sort of running out of time with you now, but just one or two final questions just to finish off. Just going back to NWA now, do you feel yourself as a pioneer, sort of a motherly figure, a role model that the young female wrestlers in NWA can say come to you and you could maybe offer a voice or a bit of hand on the shoulder, or tell them, obviously with your experience in the past, that in terms, I know you're a commentator, but you still feel yourself being engaged maybe as a liaison maybe to that NWA sort of women's sort of dressing room, that you're always there or they're approachable in terms of any questions that they may have?
Yes, absolutely. I'm an open book when it comes to that. A few of the girls in NWA on more than one occasion have come to me with just advice, whether, you know, ring advice, just overall wrestling advice about whether it's a move or whether it's just advice about decisions in wrestling or matches, psychology, stuff like that. And I mean, I'm always happy to help anyone who would ask me for any kind of advice as far as anything in wrestling goes. So yes, and I'm happy to help and answer questions from any of the you know, the younger generation of women coming up. So yes.
And finally, from me to you, Velvet Sky, throughout your career, you've wrestled in so many countries throughout the world. Have you ever wrestled in Ireland, here in Ireland? And if so, what are your memories? And would you like to come back to Ireland again and maybe commentate in your role and maybe in Dublin in terms of getting out and abroad now, given that dare I say, the pandemic may soon be over? Is that something that you're looking forward to, traveling to different countries and maybe commentating overseas in terms of matches? And if you were in Ireland, what were your memories of being in our country and obviously wrestling in our country, and maybe spending time visiting while you were here as well?
So yeah, your first question, yes, I have wrestled in Ireland before when TNA would come over to do the UK tour. I believe it was in Dublin. I loved coming over there with TNA. The crowds, you guys were always so loud for us, and the fans are so super sweet and so nice over there. Unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of downtime to go out and explore and kind of create memories, because it was like we would do a show in one place, and then after the show we'd hop on a bus, and then we would either get back to the hotel at 3-4 in the morning, have to catch a flight to the next place the next morning, or we'd hop on a bus and drive throughout the night to where we were going next. So I never really had time to kind of plant my feet in Ireland and kind of go exploring. But I can't remember the name of the hotel we stayed at, but it was super, it was, God, I don't remember. I wish I knew remember. It was beautiful. So I wish I could remember the name, because we stayed there every time we came over. I don't remember. But I just remember always looking forward to coming over to Ireland for the crowds, for the fans. Just you guys are just so awesome. And it was one of my top favorite places to ever wrestle in my career, was in Ireland. And I look forward to hopefully coming back there one day.
We are looking forward to seeing you again on the Emerald Isle, no doubt, in the near future. Velvet Sky, thanks for taking the time to speak to us this evening about your new role, transitioning to a colour commentator in NWA Wrestling, and no doubt embarking on a new sort of venture in terms of what the wrestling industry has in store for you in terms of future roles. Thanks for giving you an insight in terms of your career throughout the decades as well, and no doubt many more chapters to be written. But for the moment, Velvet Sky, God bless, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you in Ireland sometime soon again.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and you take care as well.
Cheers. Thank you, Velvet. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.